Yeah, thank you guys we've already kind of been chatting a little bit, but just want to say thank you for joining us today. This is a workshop that me and Cathy and Eric have been working on for quite a few months now. And then our first workshop was slated for April of this year, but then we all know kind of what happened around that time. So we've been definitely wanting to do this and decided that being that we're all still kind of under the conditions that we're under, it'd be best to just kick it off and do it virtually. So here we are. So thank you for joining so much. My name, if you don't know who I am, it's Brooke Brockdorf. I'm with Brookdale Senior Living in Midlothian, Virginia. We are a senior living community with a little under 100 apartments, both in assisted living as well as our memory care communities. So we have that continuum of care, and partnering with Eric with Assisting Hands is great because he also offers the home care. So it's nice to have professionals in the area that we can rely on one another and recommend one another, depending on what your family or friends or other family members that you know, depending on their needs. So I wanted to, I guess we'll go to the next slide.
Yeah,
Eric,
go ahead, Cathy.
or Cathy.
Okay, thank you. We'll.
Oh, no, Cathy, just do the next slide. Thank you.
So these workshops originally, and so we're going to go with the same plan that we had. It's always going to be on the second Thursday of every month. Right now, obviously, we're doing today at 10 a.m. I think we'll plan for that same time next month. So ideally, we'd like to all be in person and have these where we're actually being able to sit in the same room and talk to one another and do it live. But until we're able to do that, we're going to keep these virtually and just keep moving on the second Thursday of every month. So that's why you'll see the time as to be determined. We'll stick kind of with the 10 a.m. time. Maybe you might change it up depending on our feedback that we get. But then eventually we'll move that around so that we can do actual in-person workshops, which how awesome that would be. So perfect. And then I've already mentioned him numerous times, but Eric with Assisting Hands, you can go ahead and take over and introduce yourself and Cathy, and we'll get started.
Yeah, and I'll say real quick before you leave this slide, I think it'd be very important. The very last workshop is called The Positive Approach to Care. There's actually some physical demonstrations we would do and wanted it would do better in person. So hopefully by February, we'll be in person, because those things that'll be a much more effective workshop. So anyway, thank you, Brooke. I'm Eric Rohr. I'm with Assisting Hands here in Richmond, Virginia. I'm the owner of the business. And Brooke and I have really developed a very close relationship. We actually have worked together with several of Brooke's residents, and their tremendous assisted living community and memory care community that we like partnering with. And I know from working with Brookdale and Brooke, they really love their residents, and they're really great at what they do, especially in their memory care unit, and why it's a perfect partnership for us to kind of present these dementia workshops together. Go ahead, Cathy, go to the next slide. All right, now I'm going to introduce the person who's going to do most of the speaking today is Cathy Hamlin. Cathy is the executive administrator here at Assisting Hands Richmond. And I just want to let you know how special a person she is. And she is very qualified for all the things she does. I'm not even going to start getting into what all those symbols under her name stand for, but this just say she's really good at doing a lot of things within HR, staff, and the like. She also has her bachelor's in health administration from Duke University. I'm a Blue Devil as well, which kind of keeps it nice and cohesive here in the office when we do have sports. And like I said, she's the executive administrator here. But I think what's even more impressive, especially when we talk about the content that we're going to be going over today, is I don't know if anybody's familiar with Teepa Snow. Teepa Snow is world-renowned dementia expert. And Teepa has developed this approach to care for people living with dementia called the Positive Approach to Care, or PAC, P-A-C. And Cathy has spent a lot of time in becoming an independent coach certified by Teepa Snow. And I think, at least as of late last year, when we spoke to Teepa Snow, Cathy is the only PAC certified coach in the whole Commonwealth of Virginia. So she's very uniquely qualified. And then Cathy, from her many years of experience and her certification through Teepa Snow, has developed these 7 workshops. So this is all her work in developing content. You know, all the things that are on the slide are things that she's developed from all of her training. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Cathy Hamlin. And like I said, if you all have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Brooke and I will monitor those, and we'll either hold them till the end, or if we feel like it's something that needs clarification right away, we'll interrupt Cathy. So thank you. Take it away.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Brooke and Eric. I'm so excited to be with you guys today and hopefully guide you through the ever-changing world of dementia. Some of the things that we hope to accomplish today is, one, I want to give you a brief overview of really what dementia is. There are 10 very specific warning signs of dementia versus normal aging. I'd like to make sure everybody understands that. And then there's definitely some positive and proactive strategies to provide care for people living with dementia. And then at the end, we will give you some resources available for families and individuals that are actually living with this horrible disease. But before I start, I would like to kind of get a feel for how many of you have been diagnosed with dementia, or you are caring for someone with dementia, or you have a loved one with dementia, just so I can kind of get a feel of the audience. If you could take this little poll just for a second. Oh, are the results in? Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have someone we have some that are caring for folks with dementia, and we have some that are not sure, but maybe have someone that they know. So I want to start with an overview of exactly what dementia is. It's an umbrella term for a person's decline in their memory and other cognitive abilities that is severe enough to interfere with their daily life, and it's not normal aging. Right now, it's estimated that there are probably 50 million individuals, with 5 million of those living in the United States, that have this horrible disease. This number is expected to double almost every 20 years, eventually reaching about 131 million in 2050. Currently, there are 68 different types of dementia that fall under the umbrella, and they're discovering more every day. There's 4 things that everybody really needs to understand about dementia. That is, at least 2 parts of your brain are dying. It keeps changing and it's getting worse. It's very progressive. It's not curable or fixable. It's chronic, and it results in death, and it's terminal. So there are other underlying diseases that can go right along with dementia that may end your life earlier, but if you don't have underlying conditions, understand that dementia will cause death. There are 4 different types of dementia that we commonly see. Alzheimer's is the number 1. We also see dementia with Lewy bodies and vascular dementia and frontotemporal dementia. But there's also some that you will see, some people have Parkinson's disease in addition to their dementia. There's some that are genetic, like Huntington's disease. But then there's also some other dementias that can be brought on by alcohol abuse and drug abuse. So we've got the 10 warning signs of dementia. But again, what I'd like to see is how many of you see these signs and are recognizing them in yourself and or your loved ones. We could kind of get a little poll there.
We'll give it a few more seconds and then I'll poll. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll.
All right. Okay. Well, what I'd like to say before we start is the 10 warning signs of dementia don't necessarily mean if you have one or two of them that you have developed this disease. Normal aging involves all of these things, but when you see a combination of 2, 3, 4, or more of these symptoms, then it's really time to seek a medical diagnosis and see what you're dealing with, and it's probably dementia. Memory loss that disrupts your daily life, and I know all of us once in a while will experience a little bit of memory loss. Challenges in planning and solving problems, difficulty in completing familiar tasks, confusion with time or place. That's a real good indicator right there. If you're having trouble understanding visual images and your spatial relationships, another good indicator. A lot of people will have trouble with speaking and or writing. It's probably because they forget words. They're always misplacing things and they can't find them, and they don't have the ability to go back and retrace their steps. Decreased or poor judgment, withdrawal from work or social activities, and changes in mood and personality. And again, these are not in themselves signs that you have dementia, but when you've got them in combination with others, it's a pretty good indication. So we want to talk about memory loss that disrupts your daily life. It's usually short-term memory that goes first. Most people can remember things that happened long ago, and that's why they tend to dwell on them when you're talking to them. But their short-term memory is not very good. Memory loss is also, it's not consistent. As you progress in the disease, it does get that way, but in the beginning, it might be that today you don't remember your dog's name, but tomorrow you do. You can't remember your grandchildren's name, and tomorrow not only can you rattle off their name, but their ages and their birthdays. So it's a combination of a lot of things. You are forgetting recently learned information, you're forgetting important dates and events, you're asking the same question over and over again. You're having to rely on memory aids like leaving notes, big calendars, things of that nature, and depending on your family for things that you used to do by yourself with no issues. But normal aging, again, is you can sometimes forget names and appointments, but you will always remember them later. Some of the tips that we will give you for supporting a person living with dementia is keep them on a predictable routine and a schedule. That's the best thing that you can do with them. Supporting any frustrations, talk about it. Talk about how they're feeling today and what would they like to see to help manage their disease. Give them the difficulties they face on a day-to-day basis instead of focusing what might happen on the future. Because there's still a lot of things people living with dementia can do today. And I would certainly encourage you to spend time with other people and to make sure that the person living with dementia is taking part in meaningful activities. It could be recording an oral history of their life. Could be a lot of crafts. What we have also found with people that live with dementia is painting and art are a really good thing for them. It helps keep their brain stimulated. You'll also see challenges in planning or solving problems. They don't have the ability to develop and follow a plan. Numbers provide a lot of issues for them. Maybe they can't remember a familiar recipe. They want to make cookies, but they forget to put the milk in, or they forget to put the eggs in, or don't remember to turn the oven on. It's a lot of different things. One of the things that you'll see, though, most often is the ability to lose track of paying bills. They can't concentrate. And so one of the things that we can suggest there is maybe you might want to kind of oversee things in the beginning, not take them away because we want to maintain some independence, but try to keep up with what's going on with them. And the simple tasks take much longer to do, so we need to give them time. Always be realistic with your expectations. You might want to generally start to decrease the amount of responsibility you expect your loved ones to do, but you still want to maintain their sense of independence. If you're seeing that they're struggling with the next steps, gently guide them, offer them an activity that may prompt them, and cue them on the next steps. But the most important thing is supporting your loved one's sense of self and dignity is very important for both of you. It also will protect your relationship with your loved one. When they have difficulty in completing familiar tasks, most of this reflects back on routine tasks. They might not be able to button buttons or tie their shoes. Again, housekeeping might become an issue. They are struggling trying to remember to drive to get to a specific location, one that they've gone to a lot, but they still have trouble finding their way. Ordering a grocery list and remembering the rules of a favorite game. If you are normally aging, occasionally needing help, like I do all the time with settings on my phone and sometimes with the settings in the remote on the TV, those are things that are considered normal aging. But when you see it happening more and more and more often, that's when you really should become concerned. So some tips for that are want to simplify their task. Like if they're dressing, try to use things that use Velcro fasteners or maybe snaps instead of buttons. And don't insist on matching outfits. Let them wear what they want to wear as long as they're clean and they're happy and they're dry. Again, stick to a routine. Try to do things in the same place at the same time. If you are seeing resistance with your loved one or even yourself, you might just want to back off for a few minutes and give them time to relax and to process and then go back and start again. If they seem lost and confused, kind of gently make suggestions. Don't tell them what they're thinking, but maybe ask, is this what you mean? But also to keep things simple and help them with tasks that are too demanding. Sometimes these tasks can be demanding because of their age, not necessarily dementia. Confusion with time or place is also something that is very, very normal. Sometimes they forget where they live, and that could be an issue. Sometimes they can't remember how to get to their daughter or their son's house, even though they've gone 1,000 times before. These things can be very problematic. One of the things we see most, though, is with time. 5 minutes to us can seem like 5 hours or 5 weeks to someone living with dementia. And it's because they cannot process the passage of time. Their questions are, where am I? How did I get here? I don't really understand if it's not happening right now in my face. The best things that you can do are to stay calm and don't get your feelings hurt. You want to communicate with simple explanations, show pictures, other thought-provoking items, things that would remind them of important relationships and important places that they've been. You might want to travel in time with them, engage them in conversations. what did you do when you were little? Because they're going to remember these things. Or how did you do this when you were growing up? Anything that helps them to remember things that they used to do. Again, you want to offer corrections as suggestions. You don't want to sound like you're scalding when you're trying to explain. And certainly don't take it personally, because they really don't mean it. It's just a sign of the beast that we're having to live with. Another one, understanding visuals, images, and spatial relationships. A lot of times somebody living with dementia can look in a mirror and they don't realize it's a reflection of them, but they think that there is somebody out there that's staring at them, or somebody that's going to be causing issues. They also may have trouble reading and judging distances, determining color or contrast. Sometimes they might find it difficult to walk in halls, especially if you have throw rugs on the floor. Those are things that lead to loss of balance and falls. They may have trouble can't decide between the food and the plate. So a lot of things that we'll tell you then is maybe you want to use brightly colored plates so that they can distinguish the difference. Some of the signs of normal aging, though, vision changes, can be due to eye disease such as cataracts or macular degeneration. Some of it, of course, is just aging with dementia. You never want to approach somebody living with dementia from behind. Always approach from the front or the side, because they are losing their peripheral vision. They are going from binocular, being able to see everything, down to monocular, not able to see anything except what's in front of their face. If you're coming at them from the rear, it's very easy to startle them and somebody could get hurt. Eventually, the person living with dementia will not even be able to see you approach from the side because of their decline in visual capabilities. So when you're approaching someone with dementia, try to do it from the front, try to get into their personal space so that they actually see you and can make a connection before you start working with somebody with dementia. You'll also see that they probably have problems finding words and speaking or writing. A lot of times people with dementia will remember maybe 2 out of 4 words, and it takes them about 30 seconds to process what they're hearing or process what they're seeing. So they might have trouble following a conversation, or they may stop in the middle of their conversation and think, oh my gosh, what was I going to say? In time, people with dementia will eventually revert back to their natural language, native language, if English is not their first language. They could also start talking to you with gestures because they can't get their words out. They repeat themselves over and over and over again. They'll struggle with their vocabulary, and they'll tend to stick with words that they can remember and words that are familiar. They may have trouble naming a familiar object or use the wrong name. They may think that a lamp is not a lamp, but something else. When you're in the kitchen, lots of things, they may not realize what the stove is for, the difference between the stove top and the oven. Normal aging is when you're sometimes having trouble finding the right words. But when you're dealing with somebody with dementia, always be patient. Take the time to listen to what they're saying, but also give them time to respond without interruptions. Learn to interpret what they're saying, because again, their words might not make a lot of sense to you, or they might be using hand gestures. Try to understand what is being said based on the context of the conversation. Stay connected. Keep the eye contact, hold their hand, anything to let them know that you are there with them. And of course, be aware of nonverbal cues. You want to offer comfort, keep calm, keep your body language as relaxed as possible. People with advancing dementia pick up on it very quickly when you are tense around them, and that causes them to be tense. And again, you want to avoid criticizing, correcting, or arguing. You want to keep them in a conversation, and guess what? It's okay to not be able to do some of the things that they used to do. We have to accept it. We have to learn to get into their world and not have them stay in ours. And always provide encouragement. That's one of the best things that you can do for somebody. Then we come to misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. How many of you have lost your car keys and you can think though, oh my gosh, I left them in my other pants pocket? People with dementia are always misplacing things. And it might be because they're trying to keep them safe and they have a special place where they hide them that only they know about, but they lose their ability to retrace their steps and find things. They also may feel very paranoid and have delusions. So again, they're hiding things or trying to protect themselves and actually to protect you too. They also seem to walk in, if you're in a community like an assisted living, you may see them wandering into another resident's apartment and taking things because they think it's theirs. They really don't mean to be swiping it, but they believe it's theirs. They believe somebody took it away from them and they're going to get it back. But this is just another sign of the disease progressing. Some of the things that you may want to do to help people in this type of situation is consider a hoarding box or a drawer where they know that they can put objects that they want to keep safe, but you also know where they are. So when you go to look for them, you can find them. Try to work out why the person seems to be hiding things, and then show them that you're trying to help them find it. You're not dismissing the fact that they put it aside. You want to help them find the lost items. And most definitely keep a set of spare keys, keep spare eyeglasses. Those are something that always get lost. And whatever you do, do not leave important documents or items just laying around, because those can get misplaced very easily as well. Decreasing in poor judgment is a hallmark of dementia. It's a fact. While typical symptoms of the early stage of dementia, short-term memory loss, poor judgment can also precede the memory loss. Poor judgment refers to the inability to make appropriate decisions, and more times than not, it's going to revolve around money. When it's really good if you see that they're struggling with paying their bills, or you see things just laying around the house that should have been dealt with a while ago. These are things that the person living with dementia doesn't realize that they've done. They've just put them aside for another day and have completely forgotten about it. There's also trouble with them, the ability to be able to recognize danger and keep themselves safe. So that's something where we have to step in and to do that. You want to look at the extent of the problem and assess, is it really an ongoing issue or was it a one-time mistake? Always, it's a good idea to review checkbooks and bank statements and bills. Make sure that things are being recorded in the checkbook correctly. Make sure they're paying their bills on time. And check bank statements. A lot of times people living with dementia will give their money away. We've all seen scams on the internet. We've all heard scams on the telephone. Well, someone living with dementia is going to buy into this and they may give away a lot of their money. You need to be able to understand that. You want to minimize the frustration and minimize their embarrassment by offering subtle help. Just don't go up to them and say, let me do that. You can't do it anymore. But it might be, you know, you look like you're tired. How would you like some help? Or maybe, Mom, you know, eventually I'm going to have to do this for you. Can you teach me what you're doing now? That's a good way to kind of put them at ease. You don't want them to think you're taking away their independence, but you know, realistically, you have to look behind them so that things don't get misplaced, even worse, or money gets lost, people are stealing from them. And whatever you do, do not blatantly question their ability to take care of the situation. That's only going to make them angry. It's going to put them on the defensive, and it's going to frustrate you even more. And then the next thing you know, you're not going to be speaking to each other. It's just going to be a big mess. So, you know, if they make a mistake once in a while, it's okay. But if you see it continuing over and over and over again, you really need to assess the situation. Another thing that you'll see is you'll see people withdrawing from work and social activities. Dementia is a very lonely and very isolating disease. People with dementia sometimes feel like there is a stigma on them and they don't want people to know. So they're going to stay alone. They're not going to have any interest in going out with the family. They're not going to have any interest in being with their friends. If they're still working, they may not even want to go to work. They don't want people to know that there is something going on with them that is not normal. If they're not doing hobbies or social activities, it could very well be that they have forgotten how to do them. When a person is living with dementia, they can be aware of their loss of abilities. They may develop poor self-esteem and lose confidence, which in turn could lead them to withdrawal from others. So it's very, very important that we encourage engagement, that we show interest in them. We talk about their favorite memories, anything to encourage brain stimulation. You also want to take a gentle approach and focus on their strengths and abilities, not what they've lost, not what they can no longer do. People living with dementia can do a lot of things if we give them an opportunity to do that. We also want to honor their remembrances, improve their quality of life, show you respect them, show that you appreciate the lifelong lessons that they've been able to give you and the wisdom that they can still share. Just because they have dementia doesn't mean we need to stick them in a corner and forget them. Again, encourage engagement that keeps their brain stimulated. You'll also see changes in mood and personality. Sometimes they can become very confused. Again, they perceive things that are out of the norm for them. They may see a reflection in the window. As the sun is going down in the evening, they may see shadows on the wall and thinking somebody's breaking into the house. They could be very suspicious and accuse you of stealing things from them or accuse you of purposely hiding things from them. And we've even heard sometimes somebody's trying to kill me, and it's because they are very suspicious of what's going on. The changes in their brain are making them that way. They can also be very depressed because they know they can no longer do the things that they used to do when they were younger. They become fearful. They're very overwhelmed with things that are going on in an ever-changing world that they don't understand. And they can be very anxious. They can have just a sense of angst all the time. They're easily upset at home with friends or when they're out of their comfort zone. And they can display adverse behaviors that can come out of nowhere. There usually is a reason for it. Some of the reasons could be that they are in physical discomfort. They have the inability to communicate effectively, which is going to cause them to be easily upset. They can become very frustrated with the situation at hand, especially if it's something that's a little out of the norm. Another thing that we also see is that people will say things that they've never said before, things that you would never believe would come out of mom and dad's mouth, or it's going to be what comes up, comes out. They can also have very inappropriate sexual advances towards others. They can take off their clothing at very inappropriate times. Again, these are all parts of the disease. It's not normal aging. Normal aging would be having a specific way of doing things and becoming very irritable when that routine is disrupted. So when you're working with someone who is experiencing some of these things, you want to check the environment for uncomfortable situations. Have they had an accident and need to be changed? Is it too cold or too hot? Do we need to adjust the temperature? Is the TV too loud, or is there something on TV that is particularly violent? You might want to change it to something that they used to watch when they were younger, or even put music on. Distraction may also become necessary for you, just to take them away from what is happening now, take them back to another time, grab their hand and say, okay, why don't we go do this? Or why don't we take a walk outside? Just be very soothing. Soothing is the best thing that we can do. That's also going to be good for us working with someone. It keeps our frustrations down too. And then talking to avoid meltdowns. Really listen to what they're saying to you. What is bothering them? And while it might not make sense to you, it makes perfect sense to them. So we need to be very cognizant of what they're saying, their moods, their personality changes. And so now we've got several resources that we can offer to help you learn more about dementia and to see if this is something that you are experiencing, or see where the stages your loved one might be. Teepa Snow, who is my heroine, is my go-to person for anything related to dementia versus normal aging. She offers a lot of free seminars on the Facebook and internet for people who want to learn more. She offers a lot of workshops. She will also do one-on-one with people if you just reach out to her. She's very eager to do that and to help people. The Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services is another good place to go. George Worthington is the main contact there. He knows a lot of people in a lot of different areas, and in the Tri-Cities area up here in Henrico, Hanover, and he can usually point you in the right direction if you need some assistance with where to go, what to do, things like that. AARP also has some specific help that they can give with people living with dementia. Even though they're more geared to the normal aging, there are some things that they can help with. And then again, the Alzheimer's Association with the Greater Richmond chapter, they are wonderful. Marie Calindo is just awesome. She does a lot. And they also offer, through the Alzheimer's Association, some grants for respite stays for those of you who can't really afford to put them in a community. You might not be able to afford home care right now, but you really need to get away. Check with the Alzheimer's Association because they can give you respite grants. And then you can always come to Assisting Hands Home Care. We're always here to help with dementia. And Brooke at Brookdale Midlothian, they've got a wonderful memory support center there. We're always here to help with whatever we can do. And if there's any of you that are interested in learning more about home care, memory care, or a combination of the two, please call us. We're always available. And we're going to have one last poll. If you are interested in home care, memory care, or in both, please let us know and we'll be glad to reach out to you and help you with whatever we can.
Okay, I'll close out the, if you want to contact Brooke or Cathy or I, please feel to reach out. We have our phone numbers on the screens, and you can get a hold of us at any point. Brooke, anything you want to add before we see if there's any questions?
I was just going to say that we can, those of you that are familiar with Zoom, you can actually screenshot to make copies of individual slides that have been put together. So if you wanted to do that, you can, if you're not sure how to do that, under view options, you can annotate and save screen, but keep in mind too, we'll be sending out this presentation to everybody after it's over, and then also to everybody that it was sent to. So you'll have it, but it's nice to know that you can save the screen, and then you may not need our information at the moment, but you know, you never know. And so it's a nice thing to have, and it's a nice resource to know that you can pick up the phone and reach any of us at any time for any questions. You know, if we're able to help, we want to help. I mean, that's why we do what we do. So.
Yep. If there are any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself. I think you can do that, or put it in the chat box. Now, I understand that there might be some things that are sensitive. You know, don't feel like you need to ask those questions now. You can reach out to us separately, or put something in the chat box to us privately, and then, you know, with your contact information, and we can get back to you all. So are there any questions at this time? You know, Cathy's a great resource. It looks like Diane has a question.
Diane.
I do have a question. I know you're talking about dementia and things you have to be careful with the patient or person, but how about the caregiver? You know, I know so many people who are caregivers right now who are under a lot of stress and are trying to follow the rules of the road with all of this when their parents or whatever are aging, but they probably need a support group as well. You know what I'm saying? Because I think they're under so much stress right now that sometimes it's probably very difficult for them to be patient and understanding when they have this ongoing all the time.
And one of the things that I would suggest is don't rely on a single caregiver. You might want to have a couple of caregivers so that they can take breaks, because the person living with dementia can feel their frustrations. They know that there's something wrong with their caregiver, and that's going to cause them to act up a little more or to retreat into themselves even further. Being a caregiver for somebody with dementia is probably one of the toughest jobs anybody can do. Being a caregiver itself is a tough job, but when you're dealing with a disease that is killing you and it's doing changes, it's very difficult. In those cases, I would tell the caregiver, reach out to us. We'll be glad to give them any tips. They can certainly go to the Teepa Snow website. She's got tips on there for caregivers. The Alzheimer's Association is also a good place. But you're right. One of the most important things, though, is to make sure that the caregiver has time away. Make sure they have their own space where they're not having to reflect on what happened today. What could I've done better? They just need to go and let their brains just float for a while. So I know it's tough and it's easier said than done, but it is something that we do need to focus and practice.
And
And
Diane
Cathy,
too, Cathy, that's great advice. And there also, to kind of piggyback on that, there are a lot of caregiver support groups in and around the area. The Alzheimer's Association, their website will direct you to caregiver support groups. You can pretty much put caregiver support group in a Google search and search in your area. They're all over. A lot of them are done, yes, virtually now. I think some of them, depending on the size, are actually done in person because we're able to get small groups back together. But I would definitely, Diane, recommend that. And
you know, there's another thing. Some of the churches have what they call memory cafes, where the caregiver can actually take the person living with dementia, or they can go by themselves, and they have a way to intermingle with other people dealing the same things that they're dealing with. So they can get to know people, they can bounce questions off of each other. Plus, it also helps the person who's actually living with dementia be able to get some of their frustrations out, and they also see that they're not alone. There's a lot of people out there that are just like them.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing, is some of you may know my sister, who's only 2 years older than myself, she's 57, has been diagnosed with early onset dementia, and she's now in an assisted living community, actually a Brookdale assisted living community. And, one thing that really helped me is, a lot of what Cathy's talking about is you really have to get into their world. Before I understood she had dementia, it was exhausting to speak with her. She was always forgetting things. It was very frustrating, and it really made it, emotionally just exhausting for me to deal with her. Once I understood that she had dementia, and I understood that her perspective and her world was different, I got into her world, and it really took a lot of the pressure off of me. The fact that she asked me the same question a lot, or constantly forgot my 3 daughters, her nieces, birthdays, or what grade they were in. I just understood that it wasn't because she was being lazy or she didn't care about them, but she literally, her brain was not allowing her to remember that. And so it's much easier for me and less emotionally exhausting for me recognizing that and trying to get into her world. So I just wanted to add that perspective.
And I'm going to add, you can tell, Diane, how passionate all of us are about, because it's like we just can't wait to jump on and answer and help. One big thing too, and I tell families when they come and they visit and they talk with us and they don't know what to do, but they know they need something and they know they need help, is it's okay to ask for that help. I think a lot of times caregivers find themselves, a lot of times it's the spouse, it could be an adult child, but they feel like if they're not the ones doing it 24/7 and giving up everything to take care of mom or dad or brother or sister, then it's wrong. That's family and I'm going to do it. But what they don't understand is, like Cathy said, the individual that's dealing with the dementia and the Alzheimer's, they can feed off of that person's frustration, their tiredness, their uneasiness, their sadness, and it's not helping. So keeping mom or dad at home, because I can see them and I can watch them and I know they're safe, isn't necessarily doing what's best for mom and dad as well as themselves, because they unintentionally isolate. And we definitely, that's a big thing that we talk about here, is there needs to be that structure, that routine, there needs to be engagement. Just being able to see that mom's okay and she's not falling and that she's not wandering because you see her, that's one thing. And I get that. But there's a way bigger peace of mind that comes with the programs that Cathy and her team and Eric and, our team here at Brookdale are able to provide. So it's okay to ask for help. That's a big one.
Absolutely. And sometimes, it's a relief if you bring in outside help, because you can go back to being the daughter, the son, the parent. You can go back to loving them and accepting the way they are without having to deal with the day-to-day grind of taking care of someone who has dementia.
I have a couple of things. First, not to steal Cathy's thunder, but Teepa Snow will be doing a presentation on August 21st at 12 o'clock, and I'm happy to pass that information along. It's free for anyone who would like to join in. I also want to let you know that VCU Gerontology is probably going to create some modules on compassion fatigue for their upcoming semester. And I don't know much about that yet, except that I was asked if I'd be willing to be a case study because I am a caregiver. My husband does not have dementia, but I am a caregiver for him. And you may have already answered both Eric and Cathy and Brooke about respite care. I can imagine that Eric and Cathy, with Assisting Hands, you can provide respite care. But also want to know if Brookdale was providing respite care.
We do. Actually, that's great. That's a great point. And I meant to mention that earlier, and then I got to talking. And but yes, we do have respite care. It It does not have to, it can be short-term, it can be long-term, it can be 30 days, 14 days. I mean, we definitely work with the families. So if that's something which can be a big relief, we have some families that come and join us for respite care because their family wants to take a vacation and they haven't taken a vacation in a few years. And it's like, we tell them it's okay to take a vacation, you know, let us take care. So respite's definitely an option. And we absolutely will talk to families about that too.
With COVID, are you, when someone comes into
We
respite,
are.
are they staying quarantined for at least a certain number of days or?
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is we just started our reopening phases, which is awesome. Woo! And we're gonna phase back into reopening, just kind of like how everything phased down and then phased in for the state. So right now, we're working on doing the socially distant visits with families, this, that, and the other. But as far as the quarantine goes, we are actually, right now, it's a 14-day quarantine because we want to make sure that they don't show any COVID symptoms and they don't present when they first come. But we're actually working on now moving forward where we're able to test once they move in. And then we'll be able to, they won't be on quarantine after we get the test results back. That's not in place yet though. So but that is something we've been talking about. It's just up in the air about the whole incubation period.
Sure.
But with or without the quarantine, we definitely can do respite. And if we do respite, we also have a companion, which we've utilized, Assisting Hands, numerous times. Another great partnership that we have is companion care. So they're actually able to be with them while they're here. And it gives the family too, if they're on the verge of moving into a community, sometimes respite is the way to start because it slowly moves them into the process. And then we take it from there. So, and we don't do long-term leases either, which makes it very family resident friendly too.
Brooke, it's Diane again. Can you describe what respite care is?
Yeah, so respite is exactly, it's a way to take a reprieve, basically. So the family, the caregivers, they're able, if they've got a trip planned, if they just need a break, you know, if they just need a simple break and get back to kind of their day-to-day, it's where their loved one will come and they will move in, they live with us, they eat with us, they do our activities programming, they get to know everyone for a shorter amount of time. So they could come for a week, they could come for 2 weeks, they could come for 3 weeks. They can come for 2 weeks and then maybe 3 months later, they come back for a couple of weeks. They can come for 2 weeks and decide they want to stay longer. And our leases too, Diane, they're 30-day auto renew. So we don't ever tie any families into long-term contracts. So that's good to know too, that anything shorter than 30 days is considered respite. And anything over 30 days is basically you give us a 30-day notice if you ever wanted to, you know, move out of the community. So.
Yeah. And the other thing on Diane on respite is, and why I think, you know, Brookdale and Assisting Hands is all of our people are trained in dementia care. So you don't want, hey, look, I need a break, insert random person to provide that care. You'll have the comfort of knowing, and there's plenty of people out there. It's not just Brookdale and Assisting Hands, but we do specialize in dementia care. So we're providing well-qualified care for that person. So when you're taking the break, you can feel confident that, you know, a bad situation is not getting worse. The other thing Cathy did mention, I just want to make sure people understand this. Alzheimer's Association is great. They have a $750 respite grant that we've actually Alzheimer's and provided care under the respite grant for caregivers. And that's going to be 30 hours or more of respite relief that the Alzheimer's Association, I mean, not automatic, but in many cases, they can help provide that grant to help, you know, on the financial aspect. So, but, you know, I think respite's important. The caregiver needs to be fresh. They need to be in the right place in order to provide the care for their loved ones. So, it, you know, as Cathy and Brooke both said, no one should be embarrassed about asking for help. Actually, in the long term, is the best thing for the individual living with dementia, because then they're having, you know, a well-rested person helping take care of them. Any other questions? And Cathy, why don't you go to the next slide just to show, just as a reminder for all of our upcoming workshops. There we go. And again, we're going to work out the time. You know, this is the first one we did. We kind of did it. I think Brooke and I and Cathy just said, we wanted to get back on track. Let's just do it. And we basically
We did.
yeah, with like a week planning. So there's some technical difficulties that we, you know, hopefully not too many will work out, and certainly getting the word out. But go ahead. It's basically the second Thursday is the best way to look at that. And when I put these on the calendar, I didn't see any major, you know, national holidays or anything like that. So put these on your calendar. We'll make sure you're on our list that, you know, for invites with the specifics of getting out there. So anyway, what I'm going to do quick, I'm going to take us off Facebook Live, and that way if people